all of you are rather young, but you can think of events where you wish I would have done something differently. Maybe I wish I would have learned a foreign language and I was in high school, or learned a musical instrument, or maybe to program, or maybe to do econometrics. And sometimes you have that goal, but time passes and you feel you can never catch up. And I think we're in a period now where if you want to get comfortable with AI, the next few years is your window of opportunity. So in some sense, this is a way to lower the barrier to the entry with regards to AI. So the panel here is to maybe remove some of the obstacles for you to think about it in AI as a general concept, but in the context of, hey, good, Rob is my doctor. He generally comes because when I teach here, I run into these corners and I need medical care. It's one of my best decisions to be good friends with an ER doctor. But that's another story. But the goal here is to lower the barrier of entry to AI in the context of marketing. But this panel is gifted to navigate more than just the marketing angle, but put it in context for marketing within AI, within business success. So that's our goal here. And if we think about innovation, I don't think in the history that I've seen for business that there's been anything that equates the dispersion, the diffusion of technology as strong and as fast as AI. And we don't know where it's going to go. It's possible that maybe this is a swing and a miss. Probably not. So the goal here is for the panel to set the stage for us to learn more. So with that, any questions? I think you can see on the previous slide that each speaker is going to talk about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end. If you have a question, maybe I'll ask you to hold the question to the end, and that way they can address questions when we have that. So Eric is going to start. Eric, big round of applause for Eric. I'm having the panelists introduce themselves because when I introduce them, I maybe pick things that they would prefer I don't talk about. The opportunity to really center us on what he thinks is important. Eric?
That might be more fun, actually. Do I need this, or can you guys hear me? Or
the people online.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good. My name's Eric Willis. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Purina downtown here. I've been with the company 23 years. I've done a bunch of different things in my career. I was actually in EMBA 43. So I know I heard this was a marketing class that was happening in this room. I was like, I want to go sit in and maybe learn a thing or two. And I know some of you were in here. So you've already had a long day. Thanks for sticking around and and hanging out. We appreciate that. I'll preface this with, I'm by no means an AI expert. So I want to get that out on the table. If you've got questions about sort of the ins and outs technically of which platforms to use, and I'm not the guy to ask. But what I think I can do, and my goal today, is to talk a little bit about how we're thinking about it as a marketing organization, share some of the perspective that I'm getting when I talk to my counterparts in other companies or attend whatever it is, networking events, those kinds of things. And I can do that. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the current applications and some of the things that we're talking about and how we're going to use that in the future, both within marketing, but more broadly across the organization, which I actually think is maybe even the more exciting stuff than the marketing stuff. I wanted to start here because I think what's really kind of interesting is, ever since ChatGPT kind of blew up and became this thing, the discussion around AI has just accelerated like crazy. And I just put these things in here. I thought they were kind of fun because I think they reflect a little bit of sort of the craziness and what's going on here. meant to set the stage of like, not everybody really has this figured out, I think. I think there's actually a lot that we have to do. So this first, sell me this pen, it has generative AI, right? It's like the buzz thing. If anybody likes Tom Fishburne, I won't read the entire thing there, but it's basically all the risks and all the dangers and all the reasons why you might not want to do this. But you know what? What we do know for sure is we're gonna get into this as quickly as we possibly can and try to figure it out. So there's this kind of interesting conversation that I think is happening. This is just a timeline that I put together. It sort of represents the conversations we've been having as a marketing organization with some of our partners over the past couple of years. So if you go back to 2022, a lot of what we were talking about in terms of the future was all about the metaverse. And we're going to be living in these virtual worlds, and how do brands position themselves to be a part of those conversations, and how many NFTs can you create, and kind of all this stuff. And I would say the second ChatGPT launched and people started using generative AI and understanding the power of that conversation completely changed. I'm a part of a group that meets a couple times a year for a conference up in New York. And typically they'll bring in someone who's a futurist, and they'll talk about kind of, these are the things that are on the horizon. This is the stuff that we're seeing. The previous year was all about metaverse. This year she was there. She was basically saying, I haven't talked about metaverse since November when ChatGPT launched. And so, it's just kind of an interesting conversation. So that sparks this whole discussion around, wow, the power of this is pretty incredible. And immediately you've got, consultants and others kind of coming and going, hey, are you even going to need creative agencies anymore? This thing can do pretty much anything you want. Let us show you what it's going to take to, basically reduce the cost that you have. You don't have to pay these agencies, you just use generative AI. It was like, wow, that all happened pretty quickly. And then you sort of took a step back and went, wait, no, actually, hold on a second. We absolutely need creative agencies. The human piece of this is still, a critical component. We've actually been using AI for a long time. There's some stuff that all of us use every single day that is AI. Maybe we didn't even recognize that. So let's lay out a plan and figure out what we want to do moving forward. And this has all happened, I think, at least for us, relatively quickly. So I know everybody's probably gone out and played around with some of the generative AI tools, but when Ron asked me to come and do this, I was like, well, I think I'll just go out to one of these tools and basically ask it to write this presentation for me and kind of see what happens. So I plugged in, kind of what is the impact of AI on marketing? This was the topic that we wanted to get after. It kicked out a full presentation. I just screenshotted it and put it in here, literally in like 15 seconds, and you go and you read through this and you're like, that's pretty good. This is a powerful tool. And it's interesting. I was talking about that conference I was attending, and the futurist was talking, and she sort of pulled the room, because I think the conversation on this goes from, it's this exciting tool that's going to make everything easier, all the way to like robots are going to rule the world and there no more humans are needed. So are you afraid of this, or are you excited about this? And I'm still not sure any of us know enough about it to have the right answer, because there were probably 100 people there and the room was completely divided. Half the people are super excited, half the people are scared to death. So kind of interesting. Just a quick snapshot, of, some of the existing applications that we're all, kind of using that actually are AI today. It's this umbrella term. Basically we kind of look at this thing and try to define some of this stuff. So like Apple Face ID, Siri, we scroll through in Netflix, it's serving up, right, these kind of recommended things based on what we've watched previously. All of that stuff is AI, right? So we're living with it today, even though the curve and the level of excitement and the what are we going to do about this is really ramping up fast. So the last slide that I had and that I wanted to share just represents some of the ways that we're thinking about how we can apply AI within our organization. It's consistent with a lot of the conversations that I have with my peers and colleagues in other companies or the agencies that we work for who are developing our creative, those kinds of things. So you imagine the role that AI can play in looking at sales projections and anomaly detection. When you run a promotion and you sort of try to evaluate what actually happens, man, if you could have something that was really accurate and fast, how huge would that be? And in some cases, we're getting there and we're able to do that with machine learning, but we're not all the way to bright. Volume forecasting. This is a huge one. I mean, Jason and I work together. Like anyone who's working in a business where you're trying to forecast sales of something that somebody is buying, if you could use history and AI and get really sharp on that and really accurate on that, man, it would unlock a lot from kind of the other side of this, from an ensuring supply perspective in particular. And I'll talk a little more about that. In marketing, it's all about the consumer. Everything we do in our company is based on a consumer segmentation model. Imagine if you could get to those insights really quickly and with a level of specificity that maybe we can't today. Content development, right? I mean, that presentation took the thing on the previous slide, 15 seconds to put together. We've got agencies who we're working with today who develop our TV creative, who help us write concepts for consumer research. They're starting to dabble in using generative AI to create storyboards or to create copy on those things. And what I would say is what we're finding, at least today in some of these early stages, is that when it's just the machine that does that, it's not really all the way to bright. It still requires some human interaction to go back and smooth that out or adjust the copy or adjust the creative or whatever it is. But it's going to get smarter and better and sharper, and that's going to continue. I actually think some of the stuff that's the most exciting is more on the ensuring supply side of the organization. So inventory and truckload optimization, forecasting the cost of raw materials, long-term, ingredient forecasting. And then this sort of ties to what we were talking about before on volume forecasting and things like that. If you could have a system that allowed you to talk kind of end to end with a level of accuracy from volume forecast kind of all the way to procurement and what you needed in terms of raw materials and those kinds of things, we'd be a lot sharper, I think, and a lot tighter. And that's one of the conversations that we're having with some of the digital transformation work and stuff that's happening in our organization. The last one's capacity and CapEx planning. If you're spending a lot of money in CapEx, the accuracy of volume forecasting and those kinds of things and the returns would be huge. So just a snapshot of some of the things we're dabbling in, some of the things that we're thinking about, and maybe a little bit of a history or reflection of the conversations that have been happening over the last year.
Thank you, Eric. So I'm Stacy Broner. I was part of the EMBA 54 cohort, and I'm currently at RGA, Reinsurance Group of America. I transitioned back in the spring, and I am part of their strategic marketing team. So a lot of what I do is help generate new content, ideate, a lot of copywriting, copy editing, campaign management. So a lot of generating ideas and developing new content. But while by day I work in corporate marketing, by night and on weekends and lunch breaks and sometimes the middle of the night, I am a business owner. I'm a small business owner. So I have a small real estate investing business with a business partner. And whether I'm working in corporate marketing or whether I'm managing the small business, I feel like I'm using marketing in both arenas. And I think for most of you, I recognize that not everyone in this room is in marketing. However, you are marketing something. You need to get a point across. You need to get a message across. You need to get it across as cleanly and concisely and quickly as possible. So I'm hoping that some of the tips and tricks that I share with you will empower you to not be fearful of AI, but find ways to use them in your everyday jobs or in your life in general. So one example of how I recently used AI was I was given a task by one of our senior leaders at RGA, and it was in, I believe, June. That's when the wildfires were occurring in Canada. And he said, hey, we need to draft something yesterday, and we need to send a communication to our clients to explain the impact of the wildfires on mortality and on health, and what we can do to help them as reinsurers or as part of the insurance industry. So what he did, and I'll preface it by saying, I think most corporations do block ChatGPT or AI functions, and my company is one of them. However, most of us have personal computers, so we can plug it in. And this senior leader actually did plug in a prompt in ChatGPT, and I believe it was something along the lines of the impact of the wildfires on mortality. So he sent me paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs about the wildfires, and a lot of it was pretty accurate to Eric's point, but a lot of it was redundant and repetitive, and we didn't need it. So I took that information and then I kicked it over to one of our subject matter experts. As part of the reinsurance industry, we work with a lot of medical directors and they're MDs. And so she then sent me, I think, about 20 facts from her knowledge, from her research on the impact on health. And she sent it back to me, and then I took a few hours to consolidate it into these few brief paragraphs that we had, and we were able to produce that within 2 days. Now, the point of this is we had to generate that content quickly, and as busy as you think you are, your clients and your customers are also busy. So they don't have time to read the paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs. They want that information quickly and cleanly. And we used the AI technology to help get that information quickly and consolidate it in a manner that was easily digestible to our client base. Another example, I don't know if there are any teachers in the room, but I've had teachers who have used it to draft letters to parents. A lot of times, when we're ideating or we're trying to think of topics, we're trying to do it quickly, and our minds are flowing, our minds are busy, and we just need to do that in the most concise manner possible. So I had a principal who actually typed into ChatGPT, how do I send this client or this communication to this parent about a student who they were having problems with. I was also given a task at work where we had to quickly come up with different themes for an event. We were pivoting themes really quickly. So we quickly plugged that into the ChatGPT technology. And we use it as a springboard, as a starting point for the ideation process, for the brainstorming process. So while it doesn't completely replace the human work, it does give us ideas, and it does help give us that inspiration to then build off of. So my quick tips and tricks are for the everyday marketers, whether you are in a marketing function, whether you've never heard of ChatGPT, never heard of AI, or you're somewhere in between. Hopefully these 3 tips will give you some inspiration. So first, know your goal. Why are you using the software? Are you using it to ideate? Are you using it to brainstorm topics? Are you using it to gain more information? We have Google, we have all sorts of forms of research, but sometimes ChatGPT bounces the information back a little bit quicker and cleaner than you would find in the pages of Google search engines. The other day, I was looking for a template to send to a tenant, one of my tenants, who we might not be able to keep as a tenant. And I was looking for a professional way to communicate that to them, or other business matters. How do I communicate with this attorney to get the information I need for this negotiation? Or how do I communicate with a business partner to get grant money or to seal this deal? So know what your goal is and what you want your end result to be, and that'll help you better sift through the information you receive. When I was using it to find the topics or the ideas for the subject lines of that email, I had a goal in mind, so it was easier for me to quickly scan through the information, come up with 3 options, and then pitch it to my team, and we could quickly make a decision. Number two is it's a tool. Use it. So like any other software we have, Google, YouTube, your subject matter experts, your SMEs, these are all part of your existing tool belt. So just add this AI technology to that. Use this to compare your data to the other sources. A lot of times when I am asking the ChatGPT prompt for specific outputs, I am comparing that then to a Google search or to YouTube, or I'm running it back by the medical directors of the company or the other professionals who are more well-versed in the area. So just use this as an additional form of research. It should supplement what you're doing. It should not replace anything. So to Eric's point, I don't think it will ever replace human capital. It's just there to kind of give you another leg to stand on. And number 3 is fact check always. Like Google, like anything else, like humans, you could listen to a podcast from one person and they could be saying something that's completely false. Any of the tools out there today, they do have some room for error. So just use this as another one of those tools, but make sure you fact check. And like I said, I run a lot of my information by the subject matter experts to get that extra credibility. But also knowing that it's often easier to ideate from something rather than nothing. So if I'm sending material to one of these experts to then tailor and form into a different type of communication, it's easier for me to send something to them versus them starting from scratch. And remember, as busy as you are, everybody else is just as busy. So some tools that I included, a lot of what I do is write. So a lot of the information I receive, whether it's from ChatGPT, whether it's from a search engine, another form of AI, I'm trying to digest that into really clean, concise sentences to pass along when you're generating emails to your teams, to your colleagues, when you're trying to maybe pitch an idea to your family member, how to get your kids to eat their vegetables. You're taking information and you want to come across as cleanly and concisely as possible. So I've been reading the book Everybody Writes by Anne Hanley. It's kind of well known in the marketing sphere. And she gives some fun tips for how to clearly articulate your point. And I've been using it a lot as I study different ChatGPT or different AI technologies. How do I simplify that into terms that are more relevant for the audience? And then additional resources, I found these videos from YouTube, and they were kind of fun because when I type in prompts, I'm typing in whatever I'm thinking, how to do this or give me ideas for that. But these videos gave me some extra tips if you're wanting something very specific. So maybe you're wanting specific details. It kind of outlines how the AI technology thinks and how you can best script your prompts within there so that you're getting the information back that you want. So I think Professor King is sharing this presentation. Feel free to check out the videos. And we're all marketing. We're all trying to get a point across. So use this technology and leverage it, and don't be afraid of it. I think it's just something cool that we have in our resources in our tool belt now.
Hi, I'm Haley Delosic, and I am a PhD and a PMP, so I'm a little bit different. I did not graduate from Olin Business School. I'm sorry, I went to the College of Arts and Sciences. I know you might feel things about this. It's okay. So my focus in my line of work at the School of Continuing and Professional Studies is to look at the data and look at the numbers and make sure our students have what they need to change careers, to make sure our programs are ready for what's next in the economy, in the marketplace, and in their own personal and professional lives. And so I'm constantly looking at what do we need to be training people to do? And you were talking about prompt training. And my first thought for prompt training, I don't know if you know this, but you can make up to $500,000 a year as a prompt engineer, just in case anyone wants to search job listings later. So I'm an amateur prompt engineer myself, so I found that remarkable. New jobs are being created, new ways of thinking are created. With every technology, of course, some jobs end and some begin. And so for me, my background is actually in educational linguistics, so applied linguistics, and I study how people learn languages. And so one of the really cool things for me is thinking about how AI works and what its real limitations are today and the reality that it's going to keep changing. So I'm going to talk through all three parts of that. So first things first, when you're talking about AI, I'm going to take us back to basics. Computers, whenever we're looking at them, we see buttons to click and words on screen. The computer sees none of that. It's processing in binary. Everything that you're touching is happening in ones and zeros. And yet it can calculate, it can evaluate, it can collect, it can code, and it can generate because we have given it the tools to do so. But that's also because what we're doing is predictable, right? Think about what is next whenever you're thinking about natural language processing and neural networks and fancy buzzwords associated with AI. Really, it's something that you saw in the movie Frozen when they were singing together and they said, we finished each other's sandwiches. Instead of sentences, right? Immediately, it's used for comedy. It's so common that you'll know what word comes next. And you use it on your phone anytime you text and think, oh, that's the word I meant. Good job, autocorrect. And the other thing to think about AI is that it learns and grows, and that data is going to be its experience. Whatever data it has at its fingertips or wire ends, however you want to go with that. Take the metaphor where you will. But AI isn't able to get in a classroom and talk to people yet. It can be fed on itself, models can be fed on each other, but there has to be a human doing that work right now. And one of the most amazing things to happen in human technology and human innovation in society is the part where we all sit in a room together and talk about what we know and exchange that information to move knowledge forward, right? So when you're thinking about AI, those are the pieces to think about. And if anyone really wants to get into the super fun weeds of what is machine learning, how does it relate to NLP, and what is a neural network, we can talk. But in reality, what matters most is the machine isn't thinking on its own. The machine is learning about what comes next, and it's creating what it thinks should come next. This leads us to its limits. The first being about implied meanings and that prompt generation fun. I want you to think about, a relationship you've had in the past or the current one you're living in. I think ChatGPT would be quite a terrible spouse because it would take "it's fine" to mean it was actually fine, regardless of tone. The implied request is something that we actually teach a lot in language learning, right? Because it's all culturally bound. If I ask you, do you have a watch? Or am I really asking you whether or not you own a watch? Or am I asking you for the time? If I'm asking you, have you eaten? I'm not asking you for the factual information of the contents of your last meal. I'm asking if you'd like to eat food with me, likely, right? These implied meanings have a cultural reality associated with them because the phrase "have you eaten" means something entirely different to a native Chinese speaker. And so being aware of those complications is something humans have that AI can't do yet. Similarly, there's a bias in the experience. Now, I know that I'm not the first person to say this sentence aloud, but in reality, we are made up of our experiences, and if the experiences on the internet are the way that AI is made, that can be rough. There was one AI that was launched with its first tweet being, "Hello world, what a happy day." And within 10 hours, it was spewing terrible things onto the internet and had to be shut down. So there have been bad experiments in AI as well, because it's learning from what it interacts with. And the thing about it is the machine doesn't decide what it interacts with. The people who build it do, and the available data does. So you have to think about who is benefiting from the bias in that experience and how you're using that tool accordingly. Similarly, ethics of the transparency of what's behind the curtain. I think about, okay, so we take creative and we go somewhere with it, right? In marketing, right? And in my reality, I'm always marketing my data because I always have to tell a story. Numbers, they're not super good at words. So you got to help people make that leap. And so for me, when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about the creative image that is built. If it's a composite of images that already exist on the internet, how much of that was owned by the people who composited it, and how much was owned by the original creator? And are you aware when you're using the tool that you're using, how much of what they're using they got for free, or they paid someone for their work or their intellectual property? What precedent are we setting when we think about the ethical realities around the transparency of what's happening behind that model? And then the other thing is that, man, AI is super confident. It's that student who didn't do the reading who's ready to talk about it at the beginning of class, man. I have a lot of thoughts and ideas, and I'm going to tell you what they are. And sometimes it's ill-informed, but it doesn't change its tone. And when it doesn't change its tone, people lend that moment to trusting it. Whenever you're going to search on AI, that information isn't fact-checked. That information isn't run through a set of rules in the same way that certain websites are. When you think about Google, what's clicked on most is likely to be the most accurate because people kind of know what they're looking for. And when we replicate that many times over, you end up in the right spot. In ChatGPT, that's not getting that feedback because what people see is that what they take as truth. So subject matter experts are important, and cross-checking and fact-checking across the different AI tools would be another way to get around it. And yes, the tone, the context, the humor, it can't pick up on what you meant necessarily, and it can't pick up on what's happening in each piece because, right, it's looking at a series of images and it's getting better and better as it goes. and sometimes it's not great. My example is the many attempts to leverage AI for writing jokes. Freakonomics did an amazing series this August. It was a 3-episode series, but the first one was Can AI Take a Joke? It was really lovely to think about AI in that regard and think about what it could do and what it wasn't ready for yet. And that leads me to my last point. So right now, I think none of us are arguing for AI to be everything and do everything, right? Okay, good. And I don't know that anyone really holds that deep in their heart as the only way to be. But whenever we're thinking about AI and its developers learning and growing and models being combined and fed on each other and the code getting better and better, we can't predict how that's going to turn out. And we're going to have to keep learning and keep engaging with it. We can't be afraid of it because it's going to be present. And we have to, as we're engaging with it, learning about what's next, what the limits are this time, we have to keep in mind the biases, the context, the confidence, and our ethical parameters so that we're making good choices with AI. And my reading recommendation is Think Again by Adam Grant. If you haven't read it, it's a delight. And it's really thinking about what we don't know and being okay in that ambiguity. And so that is that, I believe, the last slide. Do you want me to go ahead or would you like to?
Yeah, why don't we take Q&A right now?
Oh, okay, go ahead, sorry.
We should clap first.
Oh. Thanks.
We welcome questions, or if you have an insight that you think might contribute to the discussion, that's certainly more than welcome. Hey, nice to meet you.
So as an organization, so I guess when you decide going towards maybe using AI.
Let's use a microphone so those online maybe can hear a little bit.
So as an organization, when you think of going forward with AI, using it for whatever purpose you must have been in a meeting trying to decide which department, which segment, or where you're going to use it, because there is so much of unknown that exists right now. So when you started using it for marketing, was marketing the safest to begin with? Was there any other department wherein you did a trial mock run and you said, yeah, we know enough to experiment now with marketing? What was the strategy when you sat in that room? How safe you felt? And I have a different question about the ethical. Somebody else. So let's say you hire a consultant and you outsource a job to them, and let's say they use ChatGPT to get you whatever you want. Do you feel like you're cheated because they are not actually putting their effort? What is the thought process over there?
Do we want to? Here.
Yeah, wait, thank you.
And then you guys should answer this question too. Good questions. I would say for us in the conversations that we're having, I think initially there were these things that would pop up kind of department by department, but what we're trying to do as an organization is kind of centralize it, get it in one place, and make decisions that are, kind of at an enterprise-wide level versus having kind of one-off things happen, particularly in areas where you're talking about generative AI and things like that. You mentioned there is risk in that, like using ChatGPT and those kinds of things. We're not doing that within our organization from the systems that we have. We actually have, there's an internal AI tool that's been created kind of within Nestle that we can use, which is actually embedded within Microsoft Teams, which is pretty cool. And so we've got some internal capabilities that have been developed as it relates to generative that we're using. Does that answer your first question?
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Do you invest into the workforce and put some budget out to kind of working on that generative AI? Was that the plan? Was that the focus of Purina?
Yeah, so I'd say there's been an investment in, and so the question was there an outlay from an investment standpoint at Purina in generative AI? And I would say again, what we're using today are more these kind of internal capabilities that have been developed more at a total Nestle level. Yes, there was an investment made in that for sure. There are also other AI tools, again, kind of back to the idea of there are AI tools that exist and have existed for a long time, like Adobe and things like that we've invested in over the years. But typically, we're going, let's evaluate that thing. Let's make sure that investment is worthwhile. Let's make sure it's safe. Sort of all of those things. So hopefully that helps. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. I mean, my company is at that stage.
Yep.
When, we are ready to adopt it. We kind of went forward and then pulled the plug out because of the risk, what we would be exposing outside. And
I would say for us too, there's a bigger conversation that's more, which AI is a part of, that's more just, and I'm sure probably every organization is, in fact, I know a lot of other organizations are doing this because when I have conversations with people, they are, but it's more about digital transformation and what that looks like. And AI plays a role in that, but at least from where I sit, it's not like every conversation we're having is specifically about AI. It's more about digital acceleration. What's the role that it plays? I should let you guys answer some questions.
So I hope I'm going to answer your question, but we're not just considering AI for marketing purposes. So I'm part of the insurance industry, and a lot of the work that's being done is underwriting. So a lot of our underwriters are trying to find ways to process medical data faster and faster and faster. So they're selecting various AI technologies to take the written medical records, the digital ones, combine them and spit them out that much faster in a more clean, concise way. And the purpose of that is to free up the space of these underwriters so then they can generate new business, so they can focus on other tasks. So people say, well, aren't you taking away from their main purpose, which is underwriting and assessing this information? Well, no, they're focusing on growing the business. So I guess it kind of depends on the function and the role. I don't see it as cheating. I think it's just the age that we're in right now. Things are faster. We're expected to, and I think I said it, we're expected to digest information a lot faster. We're also expected to churn it out faster. And so I think in my mind, AI is only going to be used to accelerate business. It's not going to replace jobs, but I think they're going to try to fill that freed capacity that people were using to digest all this medical data or to, crunch these numbers. They're going to use it for other purposes. Did that answer your question?
Could I just augment something that Eric said? So I used to work for the organization that Eric referenced, Nestle. And I worked in the aspect of integration. So one of the big things that we, as Eric was pointing out, in an organization like Nestle, it's not about trying to build it once and just replicate it 100 times, because that may not work for a business like Purina, while it may work for another angle of a business. So we don't try to do that. But what we do want to do is we need to make sure the sources of data that we get can be used across business streams. So we spend more time on ensuring the sources of data are the correct sources of data, the veracity of data is made available. And then as you start building a model, say for Eric's business line, Purina, you can start seeing how much of it can be reproduced for another business line without too much rework. So that's where we spend more time on, just to augment something that you said.
I appreciate you adding that. I want to add one other thing to because I think, and what I was trying to articulate and what we had is, I think everyone gets super excited about generative AI. When they think about the most logical application of that tool, they think of creative. At least I think, like, oh, it's going to, you can type this thing in, you're going to get an image, or you're going to get, when can it start to produce TV spots where you don't actually have to go and do that? And I think that's all interesting. I actually think the more interesting and more exciting role that AI can play, even for marketing, is in getting quick, accurate access to data, kind of in an instant that is spot on, or is in kind of connecting end-to-end data streams from ensuring supply all the way through to market. Because in marketing, we do the commercials and we do all that stuff, but we also do forecasting and demand planning and manage the P&Ls and work with ensuring supply on all those things. And I actually think that is super exciting.
to do that, you have to have all that data in
Yeah.
a single source.
Yeah, true.
You can't, well, you could, but it'd be a lot more difficult to be tying all these other things together just to get all that data.
Yeah, right.
So my understanding is a lot of the softwares, and maybe you could speak to this, a lot of.
That's for you. You can, just like you can.
This is teamwork. A lot of it is, the AI is translating it into a uniform language. So if you're getting data from all these different sources, part of the programming and the prompt generation is making sure that it's translated into a consistent language so that it analyzes it and spits it out in the correct format.
It's still gotta go to one source, like if I can't just take all these different sources and throw them into ChatGPT.
Right.
So again, not trying to refute what you're saying, you're right in, that used to be the thinking that you needed to take the data, replicate it into a common repository. The thinking's changing now in the integration space to say, but you have integration sockets, APIs, we call them APIs or whatever. We can quickly connect, as long as we know that it's a trusted source, we can quickly connect and keep pulling on demand rather than just trying to pull it all, suck it all and store it into a repository. Again, I don't want to segue the conversation, but for AI to be successful, the machine learning aspect has to be successful. For the machine learning to be successful, it needs to have all that understanding of where it's going to get data from. And then the integration sockets needs to be adaptable, not pull it all, keep it there, because after a while the data becomes stale. How do you get it on demand?
Yeah, I just want to share something from my perspective. So I do a lot of AI research in the medicine area. So one example is like one of my postdocs just wrote a paper, sent to me a few days ago, and I just sent back and said, don't write a paper with AI with ChatGPT. Because why? Because I can recognize the pattern in ChatGPT. The reason is, in the final discussion part, basically it's just repeating the results without any deeper, thinking about the result, how to interpret these results. It just merely just repeat the results, but in a very nice way. It's very written way, but just repeat. So there's no deep thinking into the content. So it provides zero value for the expert in this field. And I personally, I also, my thought is like, I don't think ChatGPT is cheating, because I think ChatGPT is a great tool if to take up those routine tasks. Like I received some requests, quite a few requests to write recommendation letters for residents, for students. I used to have templates, but now I just use the ChatGPT because I put a CV in, ChatGPT write a recommendation letter, and then I will customize those core part of the recommendation. Like what task, something special for this student, for this resident, or whatever they are, and then send it out. It's super quick. It takes like 10 minutes, like 20 minutes at most. So, and it's very, very well written. But I'm feeling that for any creative project and writing, ChatGPT is not I don't think it's not there yet. Because when we talk about AI, we're talking about artificial intelligence. So, there's difference between machine learning and AI. So this is actually really, there's some, difference. So in my opinion, I think for generative AI, it is still not really, the artificial intelligence, because just as you mentioned, it just calculates the probability of what follows. If you start with one word, it just calculates the probability of the next word and just keep going.
And that's what I was going to say. The predictions are only as good as the inputs.
Yes.
And so that's the other thing. If you're wanting to build, if you're wanting to innovate, the AI that we have in this current generation is not built to innovate. It's built to replicate and approximate. Maybe we'll get to the part where it's innovating, but that's not right now.
And also, a lot of tasks use this in your slides. I think doesn't require AI. It requires some like unsupervised, machine learning or supervised machine learning, those kind of tasks. And those AI tool is super sensitive to the input there. So you really have to give them a high quality input. Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out. it's very, very, very risky in my opinion.
So I can talk loudly. I'm probably just adding on to what everybody's saying, but so I work for Chubb, so also insurance, so property and casualty. And one of the things that I don't think was said, but was maybe alluded to, is that these models, a lot of them are open source. So if you're concerned, which is a very right concern that some people miss, which is that you're going to share data with it, you don't want to do that if it's like personal data. So Chubb has deployed those models internally, which you can do. I don't know how expensive it is, but I don't think it's that expensive. It would be expensive to create your own from scratch. But the other thing is that there's this idea of transfer learning. So a lot of these models, if you want to go all in and you want to train it to be for a particular task that you have, but you want to take the power of like ChatGPT, you can take that model and you can retrain it, or you can tune its training. It's called transfer learning. You can give it some additional input, and it will create a new model, but it's not like you had to build it from scratch, and it's extremely powerful. And then one other thing is that you can give it you can give a model like these generative AI models, you can give them data from a database in some clever ways where you can you don't have to give it the full data of your database. You can use some clever techniques to pull out parts of the data that are relevant to what you need in that moment. And you can feed a lot of data into the model as a prompt. So just a couple other comments.
Yes, and it's important to remember that ChatGPT is learning every day with the data we put into it.
Yeah,
So.
don't tell it things that
This is why it's shut down. This is why we're like, no, can't engage with it.
But there's a smart way to engage. That's what we're, right? Being risk averse doesn't mean not using the tool.
So one of the reasons people have their hair on fire about AI is deep fakes. So to what extent can we sleep at night that those individuals who may not be too discerning about things like political candidates aren't going to be misled?
That's a great question for anyone in the room. I mean, quite honestly, I think that's the $1 million question. That's what makes people nervous about
it's
this.
how are we knowing that what we're reading is unbiased and generated by an actual person that we're getting our news from,
And accurate and everything else. Yeah.
I need newscasters to stop doing their whole shtick on, I generated what I just read to you. You're scaring me actually with this news report.
So right now there's like an arms race between people who are creating the deepfakes, or even bloggers, the blogs, the comments, the spam, and the tools that are able to detect them. I think even in the future, this is going to be like viruses. You have an antivirus, which is always updated based on the viruses that are evolving. And I think with AI, eventually, we will catch up to detecting them, and it will just be this tug of war. New tools are available.
Yeah, so this debit and credit is that, it produces this good, and then we've got this monitoring system that can lay over to say, is this bona fide, is this data valid? But if the person is engaged in willful blindness to begin with, not that they engage in it, we are naturally inclined to like a decision and then quit looking. That the quid pro quo or the monitoring isn't implemented if in fact we want to be misled to begin with. So I totally hear you, but a bit of a concern on that.
If an article's generated and somebody you trust reposts it, then you
And it reinforces
put
my
more
beliefs.
credibility to it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's making a problem that already exists worse, but it does already exist.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what about?
But that's the debate on good and evil of it. I mean, that's why half the room is like, are you excited? Yes. Half the room is like, no, I'm scared of this because I don't, for reasons exactly like that. Sorry, I cut you off.
Well, I mean, as a person who, I teach here, and one of the things that we are constantly, I actually had to add something to my syllabus to tell my students that AI wasn't allowed. It's a provost mandate. And there are several apps that I can use through Canvas to catch AI use. But the tools aren't perfect yet. One of the things that we find is that non-native speakers have a harder time because, get this, the machine is approximating the English language, and a non-native speaker is approximating their thoughts in a language that is not their native language, making them make similar decision sets. And so I find that super fascinating in the sense of what will we accidentally catch through our, sometimes that antivirus software gets real irritating because it won't let you download the thing you really wanted to.
So is there research that there's more false positives for a non-native speaker?
Yeah,
Oh, that's curious. Okay.
it's a pattern recognition.
ChatGPT, there's also a classifier, so can catch if this is written by ChatGPT, but they shut it down 2 months ago because accuracy is very, very low. Yeah.
Does anyone have an example?
If anything just written by ChatGPT before they shut it down, you just only need to change every sentence, just change one word, and then if it is written by ChatGPT, you recognize it's written by AI. But then every sentence just change one word and put it again. No, human, just break the pattern.
So there is a person I follow on social media. He's a PhD, and I've been following him for a couple of years, and he teaches. So he struggles with catching AI. So people get these the assignment from ChatGPT. They put it in an AI that paraphrases, and then it can pass.
Yeah.
And I could see the evolution, like different models were created to catch that paraphrasing, and then a new one is created, and then
You just keep learning.
just like
I don't know. I may say that I get how hard, well, I think I do. I'm not a teacher, so I can't say this too confidently. But to me, it feels kind of like when Google came about, and everybody was like, well, we need the students to go to the library. And how are we going to make sure?
So we have a different conference meeting of all of the teachers here of how to get students to use AI ethically.
I do use it, and I want them to
Absolutely.
learn to use it well because it's a tool.
And that's exactly it. And so thinking about one of the ways that a professor has done this is that he has said, disclose your use of AI and tell me how you used it and why you used it. And then we'll grade your work in accordance with the thought that went into it, as well as the outputs generated. And so he changes rubrics for his entire class. This is one of our professors in McKelvey School of Engineering, who happens to work for the Learning and Teaching Center as well. So he's at the cutting edge of trying new things. And so that's what he's instituting this semester, is shifting his rubrics from dismantling AI altogether to finding ways to bring it in.
In-person tests. It's like when the math teacher made you not use a calculator. When you were in person, they could watch you. And so they're taking a risk to use AI and not learn. Catch them on the test.
Oh.
In person with them, because they won't be able to do the test. They've been using AI to do all their homework. Let them do it on their homework. But anyway.
Anyone else have any comments?
This is just, if you want to have some fun, YouTube Pepperoni Hugspot. It is a pizza AI-generated commercial. It's creepy and hilarious at the same time.
Thank you.
Pepperoni Hugspot.
Okay.
Are you strategizing how to use AI better than your competitors? Because it's going to level the field to some extent.
Yeah.
And if so, how are you strategizing to use it better?
First thing I'm going to say, because this is the part that I know more about, when you introduce more mediocre or more equal level content, people stop innovating. Creativity stops. And so if there's a flood of volume of good enough content, there won't be new stuff. The explore, exploit, people will be exploiting what they know and working through it from there. Sorry. So the ones who are actually doing the company running.
Yeah, I think and in my role, this is, I guess, in my day role, we're going to be using it in some capacity, whether we're using it for social media sharing, we're analyzing softwares that we're going to use to repost social media posts. And we're even considering, well, is it ethical for us to post on behalf of some of the senior leaders or employees or whatnot? So we analyze the software and we look at the accuracy of it. And we are deliberate about utilizing it in our campaigns and in our strategies. I think and I guess it's to my point, it's there. And I think somebody else said it, it's there, but how do we want to use it? How can we best use it? How can we use it ethically? And for us, it's conversations. It's, conversations with the teammates, with senior leaders, with our customer base. What are the customers looking for, and how do we best match that need with this technology?
I think it's a great question. It ties back to Professor King. The way you set this whole thing up is like, look, and you just said it too, this is a tool. Those who learn how to use it are going to get ahead more quickly because it's not going anywhere. And so I think it's a great question. I guess the way we're thinking about that is in a safe way, where we feel like it's appropriate, then we're going to get into these things and play around with them, and we're going to go quickly and try to learn. In areas where we feel like it's a little riskier or we need to hold it, we're going to take our time and get into that. But again, for us, and I think for a lot of other companies, it ties more to this bigger kind of digital transformation conversation, which is more kind of centralized at an enterprise level where you prioritize, these are the things we need to go after. Let's go after them really quickly. Let's bring in experts who understand this stuff really well to help us think through what that looks like. And let's invest in it. And that's sort of the approach that we're taking.
And maybe just to give you context, say from a business perspective, say take a company like Purina or Nestle. You manufacture goods, you want it moving fast from the manufacturing point to the warehouse point, from the warehouse point to the logistics, the distribution point. Now think about the time it spends in that warehouse. That can either make you money or lose you money. The longer you keep it in that shelf, loses you money. So what we have is for certain warehouses, you put in sensors, because you want those goods moving fast. Chilled products, for instance. You can't keep them in shelf for too long. You need to move it fast into a truck. You need to move it fast into a grocer as fast as possible. So those things, you can already make tactical decisions, say invest more there. For long life, long shelf life products, you don't mind humans going and scanning barcodes and stuff. So you want to be sensible how much of active machine-led decisions you make, which will then make you spend more money there and less money in those things where you don't mind a human still going and doing those calculated moves. So again, it's all about how much money you have, where you want to spend it, how fast you want to spend it, and then do it.
I just want to add one thing, because back to your question and sort of the way that we're approaching it, and it kind of ties to that timeline that I sort of put together, which is this thing started to explode. You get a lot of experts who want to come in and see the dollar signs associated with we're experts, let us come in and kind of help you with this. So I think the flip of get people in who can help you is evaluate who those people are and make sure that you're poking at, like, show us a case study, show us what you did, what was the role in this thing that you did, and show us the outcome. Like really evaluate. For us, I think it's like really evaluate that stuff, because a lot of experts can come in and they see dollar signs and they want to help companies, and it's like any other topic, but
I imagine there may be comments that need to be exchanged yet, but given the time, what I'd like to do is 4 things. We've got a video here. Do you want to show us your?
This is actually a real-time writing of this thank you card, right? And ChatGPT is asking questions about the details associated. I know the typing's a little small. So, of course, I'd be happy to help create a virtual thank you card. Please provide me with the details you would like to include in the card. And so, in the end, we end up with, dear attendees of the Marketing and AI panel discussion, we would like to extend our heartfelt thanks for joining us at the Knight Center at Washington University in St. Louis on Thursday, September 28th. Your presence and participation made the event a resounding success.
Okay. Well, I think.
It continues on.
So,
We
three other
heartfelt thank you.
things. Three other things. One, thunderous round of applause.